is going to be run by David Gill, CEO of St John's Innovation Centre in Cambridge, so really good to have David here with us today. He will tell us a bit more about the session, what to expect, and introduce the speakers shortly. But I guess a massive thank you to Innovate UK EDGE, who are responsible for us, they're doing great support and doing great things in the UK to drive early stage founders and entrepreneurs as well. So thank you to them. David, I'll hand over to you to introduce.
Thank you very much indeed. If I could invite the panelists to come forward and take a chair. And whilst they're doing so, I think the crowd is still being lined up. Come back to you. Come on to you. Now, let's see if we can get you a microphone.
We're going to get you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to this session on funding of finance and growth and innovation to build to evaluation. My name is Gill. My day job is running the St John's Innovation Centre in Cambridge, which is home for about 70 early stage scale-ups, all of whom are one or another in the innovation space, but we are sector agnostic. One of my other jobs is to be the national lead for Innovate UK EDGE's interest service, which is the investment readiness for high potential companies. And it all links together because several of our panelists this morning will also have interacted not just with Innovate UK EDGE but with interest. And by way of further introduction, I can say that this morning I feel we have a very entrepreneurial panel, not least because we have to do a fair amount of slicing and dicing. With very analog world problems with things like trains. So all our panel are now with us this morning, which is great. And I'm going to introduce each of them very briefly to you now, before handing over to each one to talk about their area of expertise. I suspect what we're going to find over the course of our session is there's a lot which is about lending finance, it's about doing the preparation and bringing in other sources of funding that equity go further. So it helps you with your valuation, it helps you with ownership, it helps you build much more robust business plans. And our first speaker this morning is David Charles, the Scaleup Director of Innovate UK EDGE. He will be followed by Gomez-Jenkins, the CEO of Supersharp Space Systems, or S4, as we prefer to call it, especially this time of the morning. Hemaxi Bhatt is Program Lead Innovation Lens at Innovate UK. And you can see there's a clue there that we'll be talking about debt as well as equity. And then we have a brave late substitute, Mira Saraf, who's standing in for the founder of Brightio. So very welcome to you, sir, and thank you for being able to do the improv thing, which is one of the real parts of entrepreneurial firms. We will then move on to Susan Elliott, the Senior Manager at UK Network, the British Business Bank. And I suspect that although if you are an advisor, if you're an investor, you've probably interacted with the British Business Bank in the 5 years since it started, it's more likely if you come from the entrepreneurial space yourself that you're not aware of what BBB does. And I think it's one of the most exciting things that we have seen in the UK to help us, alongside the Innovation Agency, have robust institutions that support the world that we've been talking about yesterday and today. And on that, I think we can say that the 2 previous sessions, one of which was about the alternative funding, and another of which was about making sure we get all the documentation right, leads in very nicely to our panel discussion this morning. And I suspect that most of the panelists will interact with C-Legal before, being able to have a platform like that makes it so much easier to get all your occupancy in order, makes it easier for investors and lenders as well as for the entrepreneurs themselves. Now, let me say at the outset that I shall do everything in my power to make sure there's a good chunk of time at the end of the session during which our panelists will talk about their own area of expertise or questions from the floor, and there'll be questions from outside this building as well, which will be being interest. And the last little word of instruction I'd like to say is that Innovate UK EDGE isn't just about funding. It's there to cover the commercial strategy beyond investment, commercial strategy in the ground. extended to managing innovation and entering global markets. So although we're coming at it from a funding aspect this morning, it isn't only about that. And with that, I'd now like to turn to Charles Ward. Charles, over the past 30 years, has worked with companies large and small in the UK and overseas. He is currently a Scaleup Director with Innovate UK EDGE. And a lot of his portfolio companies are being remarkably successful, and we will be hearing from some of this today. So I suppose the question is, Charles, did you kick us off this morning with how to build the value of business to appeal to investors?
Well, good morning, everybody. From my perspective, so just to give you a little bit of background, my title is Scaleup Director. I've also been an innovation and growth advisor, and I've been doing this for just over a year. I do this for 4 days a week, and in my 5th day a week, I'm non-executive director of a early stage Internet of Things software company. So, in a sense, you could say that on the Friday I have to eat my own dog food. Now, in answer to your question, the points that I'd like to make are that, as David has referred to, there's an awful lot of support out there, and it's been my experience that it's not, that the awareness of this support isn't always that great. So the first message is that there's a lot of guidance, and so in my day-to-day role, I'm both delivering coaching to early stage companies before their fundraising, and in some cases, particularly with my scale-up clients now, they have been through at least one fundraise and possibly on their way to a second. And in one case, I'm working with a company that's going to IPO. And so I am both a deliverer of support, so I'm sort of very much central in the Innovate UK proposition, but also my other role is to help companies navigate the other sources of support that are out there, and there are plenty. And it can look like a bit of a labyrinth from the outside because there are a lot of support providers. So just to give you an example, I've got a client who's a chemical manufacturer who's been hit by the gas prices. They're buying gas off the grid. They'd like to invest in their own combined heat and power capability. It's going to cost them about £3 or £4 million. So we've got to find a way of raising money for that because they can't afford that out of cash flows. So the grants available to them range from £2 million, which they would be eligible. In fact, I'm going to speak to them about it, their application this afternoon, down to something offered by Norfolk County Council. They're based in Norwich, 10k. Now, it's not to be sniffed at, but it just shows you that, and that probably took me an hour just to discover those things. They could have discovered it themselves, but however, they don't understand that sort of ecosystem. So in answer to David's question, one of the things that I've noticed is that there is both the support in terms of guidance as well as funding support. About half of my clients are Innovate UK grant beneficiaries. And when I speak to investors, those companies that have taken full advantage of what's available to them prior to going to the market for money are regarded as quite savvy, and it does send the right signals that these individuals running these businesses are resourceful. And so you can, and so in the process of taking advantage of that type of support and the funding options that are available, what they're doing is building up their businesses, getting revenue momentum to a point where the timing of their going to the market for funding is much better in terms of they're credible, they've got traction, and they haven't burnt investor money in doing that.
Charles, thank you very much. And I think one of the companies you've been working with is S4.
Yep.
Marco Gomez-Jenkins, you are CEO, co-founder. You're also a non-startup Edinburgh Enterprise Fellow. I've been told a lot of non-startup Edinburgh having you here today as opposed to doing a lot of marketing. Now, what struck me is the sector you're in, satellite aerospace, extraordinarily challenging for a startup. Could you talk us through the journey, how you managed to move from the research base, from being a piece of Cambridge research basically, to being a company that is now being recognised as one of the future leaders in the area? So what's your journey? What are the general lessons you apply for other people?
Sure, thank you, David. To give an overview, S4, we're a University of Cambridge spin-out, and what we're developing is unfolding space telescopes to take high-resolution thermal images of the Earth. And with these thermal images, well, there are a variety of applications. You can build temperature maps to monitor wildfires at an early stage, or to monitor the energy efficiency of buildings to reduce carbon emissions. And our technology enabled us to fit a large telescope into a small satellite, the size of a microwave. So with this technology, we can enable large satellite constellations to take high-resolution thermal images of the Earth frequently. And well, as David mentioned, we started out as a research group at the University of Cambridge, and with a shell company, with the idea of spinning out a company to sell these telescopes. It was extraordinarily difficult in the beginning, in the sense that when we approached investors, I mean, we didn't have a lot to show. It was ideas, designs, and that's why we decided to move forward with the grant funding route. And well, there are a lot of benefits to applying to grants. The first one is the funders are more willing to take a risk on ideas, on something that where the technology readiness level is very low. Second one is that it's equity free. You can also get very valuable feedback from the reviewers, even if your application is not successful. But if your application is successful, it demonstrates validation from experts in your industry. And that validation turns into traction. And it's also well, very appealing to investors once you start winning more and more grants. So from our experience, we started really focusing on grant applications about 1.5 years ago. And one of the lessons that we learned in applying to grants, and preparing successful grant applications is, well, really consider what is the business opportunity. Apply with partners as well, because in the beginning, sometimes you're just a small company with no sort of a track record or credibility. So applying with partners that really see the value in moving forward with this idea, it's very beneficial, and it allows you to focus not only on, say, your part of the value chain, but if you apply with enough partners, you can cover everything. An example for us is that, well, we're in the very first step of the value chain in Earth observation by building the telescope. But we applied with other partners that have expertise in building satellites, in analyzing satellite images, so we can demonstrate an end-to-end solution by partnering with people. And so I had one additional point. Yeah, and in general, it's, I mean, it's sometimes, at least for us, it was the only route. Now we've gotten to a point where we've won about 1.7 million pounds in funding from grants. So we're at a stage where investors are now interested, and we're looking for private investment. But yeah, it's definitely a great way to get started.
Okay, thank you very much. And if I could turn from the entrepreneur, the user, to another source of funding, Hemaxi. Hemaxi, you are the program lead for innovation at Innovate UK. And I think it would be wonderful for the audience to hear where you fit into the overall offering of Innovate UK. And I suspect quite a few people would be a little bit surprised to know that the research team is in an ocean lane, because something that's drilled into all of us at early stages, until you've got regular dependable cash flow, you shouldn't borrow it. So could you give us a little bit of sketch of where innovation loans fit and why innovation loans?
Thanks, David. Yeah, most people. Sorry. Hi, can you hear me now? Brilliant, that's technology for you. Yeah, innovation loans. Innovate UK, which I think a lot of you will have heard, and you'll probably know that they do lots in the way of grants and things. But innovation loans have been around since 2017. And there's where they actually fit in is really where you've done your initial sort of proof of concept, where you've tapped into the grant, and then you're ready to move forward with that R&D activity. So it's that later stage R&D, looking to move forward for commercial success. And we've got a portfolio now of about 200 clients who've benefited from the loans, and we've lent in the region of about 180 million. And up until literally a few weeks ago, it was a pilot, and we've been waiting for government to confirm that we'd get the go-ahead. And absolutely fabulous news, innovation loans are going to continue. So, you know, it is another source of debt funding for you, where you can't get traditional bank finance. What we're doing is, Innovate UK are will take on that risk, that innovation risk that traditional lenders aren't prepared to do. And what we're offering, or what we will be offering, are loans in the region of 250,000 to 1.6 million, with 100% funding for R&D costs of your project. So very much project-based, available to single applicants rather than collaborations, which is really what you're sort of used to with grants. And a similar sort of application process, really, where if you've applied for a grant, we still want to know about the innovation side of your project, but additionally, there's two other parts that you really need to focus on. And one is the business. We want to know about the business, the background, what you're involved in. We want to know about your management team, as well as really, you know, all the things that go into making a lending proposition. And then we'll also ask you for your financials, and we'll ask for your projections. That's really what we're basing our decisions on, because as an early start, or still focusing on doing that R&D, you won't actually have historic figures possibly. So when our credit committee are making decisions, they're being made on your projections. So that's really important that you do focus on those. And the way they're structured is a maximum term of 7 years. And the first 2 years, we call that an availability period. And this is where you're doing your R&D activity, and you will then want to draw down on your loan. You can actually draw down on that loan quarterly in advance, which is opposed to what you do with grants. The interest rate, I mean, at the moment, the interest rate is 7.4%, and you might say, oh my gosh, but actually it's quite, for the risks that Innovate UK are taking and the way that the loan is structured, it is a very good rate. And what you'll do in that availability period is you only cover interest at 3.7%, and you only pay that on the amount that you draw down. The remaining 3.7% gets deferred to the repayment period. So, you know, with regard to your cash flow, it's really helpful in those early stages. That can be up to 2 years. The second period we call the extension period, and this is really where your R&D activity is completed, and what you're looking to now do is to basically commercialise that product, so get to commercial sales. So once again, that can be up to 2 years, and you only pay interest on the amount that you draw down at 3.7%, so the outstanding balance, and the remaining 3.7 is deferred. Your actual repayments don't start until that particular period, those 2 periods are over. So up to a maximum of 5 years, and at that point you pay interest on the full amount. And really by that point you will be generating those sales and be able to afford those capital and interest repayments. There's a little bit of flexibility in the terms, but a maximum period of 7 years. So I think it's a really good source of debt finance for companies that have want to really move forward with that late stage R&D and take the product, the service to technology to that commercial success. We're hoping to run some competitions shortly. and more news as it comes out will be available. So that's sort of innovation loans in a real nutshell.
All right, thank you. I'm going to be slightly controversial. I also know the answer to this one, but personal guarantees.
You'd be really pleased to know that we don't take any personal guarantees, we don't take personal security. What we do take, though, is a charge over the assets of the company. So it's, we call it a mortgage debenture, and it's a fixed and floating charge over the company. So yeah, no personal guarantees, no charges over properties, but you know, we want to still be a sensible lender. And also with mortgage debenture, where we do take that charge, if later on we do appreciate that you may want to take on additional debt and there's a senior secured lender, well, we'd be more than happy to rank behind that particular secured senior lender by way of priority.
Good. Thank you. That's a very responsible approach to lending. I think there's quite a few people in the room that don't have this. Yeah. So Hemaxi, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to carry on our pattern of moving from supplier to this time, if I say consumer. There are more grants than equity or loans. And we're very grateful that the aristocrat has been able to turn up at a late notice because the founder of Rhino has been detained, I think in Cambridge actually today. Coventry. You are doing the entrepreneurial thing of having to double ask. You've only been at the company a few weeks. You were parachuted this morning. But I'm sure that the remaining returns that won't be any obstacles turning into more of that. I know that you do the wireless connection, particularly for internal location, helping companies develop their products faster and better. Could you tell us a bit about the company and also tell us a bit about, from what you know, how it got to where it is, including the funding? Because you're that rarity of an innovation firm that hasn't taken any equity.
Yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Good.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for that intro. So good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to say it's excellent news about the Innovation Loans Programme. So I, full disclosure, actually left Innovate UK after 7 years, just 4 months ago. So I'm very familiar with the Innovation Loans Programme and everything else they do, and have been waiting for that news for a while. It does play a very important role and fill an important gap. But anyway, that's not my piece, that's the margin, so I'll not go on about that. We are also one of Charles's clients. I'm very fortunate to have him as an advisor, as a recipient of Innovate UK grants. So about Bright Yellow, we're a bit of an old startup because we've been going for quite a while. Freddie, the CEO, initially set up a business to develop and deploy Wi-Fi networks. So he did the first city-scale Wi-Fi network in the UK, which was in Milton Keynes, and that was his business for some time. As he developed that business and ran that business, he gained an insight that actually, we're deploying Wi-Fi in buildings. One of the challenges people still have, even though they're connected, is they can't find their way around buildings. You can't use GPS, you can't use your Google Maps inside a building to find the room or the clinic or whatever it is that you might want to get to. And that can be a real problem. Maybe not in a smallish building like this, but in large facilities like railway stations, like shopping malls, like hospitals. I mean, who hasn't been lost in a hospital? Pretty much everyone I meet gets lost in hospitals. So being able to find your way around with pinpoint accuracy, and that is a key feature of what we do, is the high precision accuracy, can make a vital difference to getting to your clinic on time, to meeting a loved one off a train, particularly if they've got disability assistance. So there are all sorts of use cases for that high precision mapping facility. And that sort of pivot, that realization, that pivot began about 9 years ago. And it started actually with an Innovate UK grant. We were part of a consortium that won a grant to look at cloud processing of images of the insides of buildings, and that helped to build our backbone for what we do. More recently, we've had 3 grants, one directly from Innovate UK, and 2 from Innovate UK, but actually funded from elsewhere. So that's another aspect of Innovate that's worth keeping in mind. They actually do run competitions where it's not their money that they're issuing or giving, granting, but others, they have partnerships with other bits of government, with firms, where they and other initiatives that they because they've got such a strong operational capability for innovation challenge contests, they can lend that facility to other organisations who do. So 2 of our grants have come through that. I'll briefly describe them. So the Direct Innovate UK one enabled us to develop a complementary bit of technology which was around location tracking. So whereas the invoice location helps you get around, the location actually helps you locate a person or indeed an asset, because it can be pivoted to asset tracking, which can be useful in manufacturing facilities. But that has been applied, and it was part of the COVID-19 response program, has been applied to care homes. So how do you ensure, given there's a crisis in care homes in terms of staffing, how do you ensure that people are where they need to be or where they should be, haven't gone off wandering, which can be a challenge for people with dementia, for example. So we developed a wearable that tracks people very precisely. And should something out of the ordinary be happening with them, it triggers an alert to a carer who can go and check on them. And that way they don't have to be monitored in person as frequently as they otherwise would be. That system also allows for all sorts of other health insights to be generated, so can actually add a lot of value to care homes. The other 2 projects are around rail travel. So one of them came into the Department for Transport program, which was all about improving accessibility to rail stations. So we found that something like 6% of the population won't travel by train because of anxiety around what happens at interchanges or at big termini. They're made nervous by the idea of crowds and not being able to find their way out or to find user-friendly or disability-friendly routes out of the station. So what our system enables is for them to see what happens at the station before they go, because we create a digital twin of the station. And then when they arrive at the station, can actually navigate in real time their way out and they can call for assistance if they need to. So that's what we call the ATRIG program. There's another similar project, but it's not accessibility oriented. It's showing the value and the power of 5G for solutions like that, and we're working with West Midlands 5G accelerator on that. Then again, the competition for that funding program is run by Innovate, but the direct funder is W5G, and I think the money actually comes from CMS. But then again is showing our technology mapping stations and how it can work to help people more mobile using public transport. So in terms of, insights, so yes, Innovate UK, that enabled our technology pivot and the development of a number of our solutions. That was vital. I don't think that would have happened with private investment. And were it not for those grants, chances are we might still be doing Wi-Fi networks. So it played a vital role. If you really want to create something new, it's definitely worth looking at Innovate UK, particularly if you're pushing the technological envelope. There's a I suppose, a caveat also that you can get hooked on these things. Innovate UK has this concept of a grant junkie and companies who just keep coming back. And I can see the temptation, having now been in one. And it's not a grant junkie by any means, but we've had a few. And for us, the imperative is to commercialise. And so to reach out to the sorts of resources that Charles has alluded to, and to start building or getting support from other places, but also building commercial relationships, which is what I've been brought in to do. So I'm working on building partnerships with the companies that design, build, and maintain these large facilities like railway stations. That's probably our most effective route to market, because they have the relationships with the NHS, with the train operating companies, and so on. And they are looking increasingly for innovation. Talking about corporates, there's another area of investment that actually we are also exploring. We are looking to raise, by the way, but I don't know if it's been mentioned today or will be mentioned, but corporate venture capital, where you've got a solution for a certain sector. If there's a large corporate working in that sector, more of them are setting up their own VC funds that are aimed at investing directly in companies in that sector. I suppose Barclays, in a sense, by running this for fintech, arguably is one of them. Whether they invest directly or not, I don't know, because I don't know enough about Barclays Rise. But that's sort of a few solid history of Bright Yellow and a few insights from our journey.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the corporate history and the insights also into different instruments you've used. I think it's fascinating you're somebody who's, as it were, gone from the advisory side into the entrepreneurial side. there's a bit of a theme, as our next speaker, Susan Elliott, has done, in the sense of reverse recently. Susan used to run a real business, and he's now a British Business Bank. I personally find the British Business Bank one of the most exciting developments of the last 5 years, as a sort of policy wonk. It was obvious to me that the UK needed an institution like that. But I suspect a lot of people, particularly those who are running their own businesses, won't be familiar with what you do, because people don't access British Business Bank directly, they go through intermediaries. So I don't know if Susan will give a brief insight into the bank as a whole, but also into things like partnerships and intermediaries that we work with.
Yes, thanks, David. Morning, everyone. I'm, as Sue Elliott, and I'm the regional manager for the British Business Bank out in the field in the South East. Another colleague works in London, and we cover the whole of the UK and the devolved nations. And the field team is effectively the eyes and ears of the bank out in the region, and it's our job to talk to businesses and stakeholders, finance intermediaries, and the funding providers to just understand what's going on the ground, to feed that back up through to the bank to inform policy, and ultimately back through to government policy. And on that, the British Business Bank is fully owned by government, but managed independently, so arm's length government. And it's our job to help make the finance markets work better. And the only way we can do that is to understand where the gaps are, where the imbalances are, where there needs to be additional capital, different types of investment. So that's the role that I do. As David mentioned, really pre-COVID, the British Business Bank was much more behind the scenes, working with the funding community and the finance community. And 18 months ago, it suddenly was out there working directly or in the media, if you like, through the bounce back loans and the coronavirus emergency loan funds. And I think that has shifted an emphasis about how we might engage in the future with the business community and the finance community. And I think one important thing to mention is that we have a revised sort of mission and role now in terms of helping sustainable growth. And there's a revised set of objectives, which includes that about supporting businesses to make that transition to net zero, and that new intent was formally published a couple of weeks ago, and I think that's a really important thing. So we're talking about sustainable growth, and that's a message through from government, not just growth for its own sake. And in terms of one of the other objectives is helping businesses find the right finance that's best suited to your needs. And through that, we have some resources. We have a finance hub on the website. And by going through your business journey and understanding what you might need the money for, we can help you try and find appropriate sources to then go and seek. Charles was mentioning it. There is so much out there, but finding your way around that. So we have, along with a number of other sources, we have one of those resources for you to tap into. But in terms of the British Business Bank, what does that mean for you as a business or an early stage business? About 40% of businesses take in external finance. So we have a part to play to make sure that the finance is there and you can access the finance that you need. We are primarily a funder of funds, as David mentioned. So working through right now up to about 180 delivery partners. So co-investing, working alongside, providing guarantees behind the lenders and the commercial investors. And by doing that, we have more impact and more reach because we're leveraging government funding through the lending and investment community to get more money accessible in the right place for businesses that need it most. And I mean, in terms of where you might be able to access some of the finance, being clear about your plans and understanding what the money is that you might need. And one of those, which we haven't touched on today, is startup loans. And if you're within the first couple of years of your business life, then that potentially is a source of income and a source of loan, should I say. And what many people don't realise is that it's a personal loan for business use, up to 25,000 per founder of the business. So if you're in a business with 4 founders, you can actually each take out those loans. So I think at the early stages, while you're building value in your business, it might be alongside some of the grant funding, some of the other loan finance, but that's £100,000 worth of debt finance as you build value in the company. Not many people take that value of loan, but the opportunity is there, and alongside that there's mentoring support. So there's a number of delivery partners working with us on that, providing that extra support as well. So the startup loans is a really key way that that government can put money to invest in creative entrepreneurial businesses without, again, having personal assets on the line, and having a manageable interest rate over about 6 years. And I think that is something that I wanted to mention, just to make sure that people understood that that's sat in there. It sits in there with grant funding and some of the early stage funding. So in terms of other types of funding, I think the next session is talking about that investor readiness. And one thing that I hear is that there's a sort of a disconnect between opportunities and where the money is. There is money, but it's finding the right source of money, and being really clear about where your ambitions and purpose aligns with the investors. I think that's something that has been part of the conversation today, is really clear plans and finding the right investor, and people like me and my colleagues. A part of our role is trying to join the dots and create a better ecosystem, and understanding where the gaps are. And we're working more strategically with Innovate UK across the country as well. So that's really where the British Business Bank sits. Happy to answer any questions specifically, but we're there to help make the markets work better for all of you.
So thank you very much indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've got the flow this morning that if you're looking for funding, finance and growth to improve your valuation chances, there are many different strands out there, including perhaps some surprising debt sources alongside grants. It isn't all about equity. There's a lot of advice, there's a lot of coaching, mentoring, and coming back to Charles's point, it can seem quite complicated. I urge you all to go to the Innovate UK EDGE website, start your journey there. Once you're working with a guide like Charles, that will lead you to many other sources. And we've got a few minutes left for questions. I guess in addition to the questions that might come from the floor, I'm looking at that with a magic iPad. Have we had questions flow in from elsewhere?
There's some loading up, so if any from the floor to begin with would be fantastic.
I think if the microphone is handy, I can repeat your question. So I'm going to take the questions. Please, sir.
In terms of the British Business Bank, do you guys offer capital repayment holidays or anything like that? Because the nature of our startup is that it's incremental in terms of development. So we've got revenue coming in at certain points. We're very early on, and we know when we're going to get revenue, but we need funding in order to get our product to market. So I know it wasn't on your website, so I thought I'd just ask directly.
Some of that information will be directly with the lenders, and for the devolved schemes, the decision making on elements such as capital repayment holidays will be with the lenders. But there are alternative sources of funding that will talk to you about the terms. And I know that some funders, such as those offering mezzanine funding, understand absolutely and see that as higher risk money, and then will be more readily talk to you about those terms. But the British Business Bank won't set specifically those criteria. So talk to the lender and encourage you to understand the range of options, and there are many offering lots of different terms, including capital repayment holidays.
Is that after the application process?
For the startup loans, if you're talking about that, that's quite a specific application through the delivery partners or through our website. For the other programs that we deliver, which are providing guarantees and extending debt facilities through other providers, then it's through their application process as opposed to directly with the British Business Bank. We're primarily, aside from the startup loans, a wholesale bank working with other commercial lenders.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Lady there in the gentleman front. Yeah.
Do any of you work with level universities, the power universities, to support startups and potentially after a few years worth of employment, or do you encourage us to go individually to our prospective universities?
Well, yes. I mean, I've got an example of a client, small business that I work with that was on the radar screen of the local university, happened to be the University of Essex, and they run an angel club. Is that the right term? Yeah. Angels of Essex. Yeah, and by being on their radar screen, he's had 2 tranches of funding already, and it wasn't particularly difficult. So the answer is yes.
I'd certainly encourage that as well. I'm connected with a number of the business angel networks around the southeast. I know that certainly Surrey, Reading, Southampton, Brighton, Sussex have some angel networks and are connected. So there's a route in through the universities and through their commercial teams.
Thank you. And time for one last question.
Yeah, just a quick question about Innovate loans, because we applied to IUK Smart Grants. We got 74% as a score, and it wasn't enough because the threshold in the last few years raised a lot. And so, is there any kind of fast track in order to switch to Innovate loans to get some benefit, if we move to innovation loans?
Well, to be honest, with the innovation loans, there's 2 parts of the application. And one element will be the innovation of the project, the quality of the innovation. So we don't necessarily work, we're looking at that top caliber of applications, but also as a business, you need to be right to take on a loan. So with the grant you mentioned, it was very much around the innovation. With the loans, it will be 2 elements. Now, I can't say that if you were only at 74%, that you'd be okay for the loan, because there's 2 different parts that have to be assessed to the quality of the innovation, and there may be a chance that it could be successful, but there's a lot that would need to go into it. We don't work on the basis that we have this pot of money and the first sort of 20, 30 applicants or 100 applicants or whatever it is, we'll get the money, and anyone below it won't. It doesn't work like that with innovation loans. It's very much the innovation project is assessed by external assessors in the usual way, and then our credit committee and our credit team will assess the actual business and financial information, and then they come together, and it will be whatever is right for the business and that it can meet its repayments and the innovation quality is there, that we will progress that particular application.
Betsy, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your questions. On your behalf, I thank the panel. I know you have a slightly long time, so I won't name them all, but you know who you are, consider yourselves thanked. And if you have any more questions, which I'm sure you will, do get in touch with us. It won't be difficult to find. Thank you very much indeed.